In this video, I'm going to talk about the importance of Amazon's leadership principles in job interviews today. Okay, and if you ask Amazon this question on whether their principles are more or less important today than they used to, their answer will always be yes, they are far more important, they're critically important, and this will remain the same. You know, this is company policy, this is actually great policy, if you ask me. However, in this video, I'm going to focus on some pros and cons to give you a slightly different perspective based on my experience. First thing I'd like to talk about here would be Jeff Bezos versus Andy Jassy. Okay, so the most popular video on this YouTube channel is a compilation of Jeff Bezos' appearances talking about explaining leadership principles to various audiences. So Mr. Bezos, I think he made hundreds of such appearances talking about the leadership principles. Now, in a contrast, Mr. Jassy has also been speaking about the leadership principles, but far less. And it's only around 1 or 2 months ago that he also released a talking head video explaining the leadership principles. It's a 45 minutes video, which is more geared, I felt, towards an internal audience, that is Amazon employees, or at least more senior leadership even type of roles, right? So notice here the change, right? Second thing, and this would be to support Amazon's leadership principles, would be that they are still a key element, a central element to each and every final interview with Amazon. Okay, so when you're getting an invitation for final interview, for those interview rounds, they are still centered on those leadership principles. You still get asked questions on the principles. This has been the same for over a decade here, right? Third point here that you should consider would be Amazon's focus towards employees in their principles. Right, so it's no secret that those principles were launched primarily for employees, and there are 2 new principles which they launched, I believe, 2 years ago, which are exclusively for their employees. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Notice the focus here, right? Now, on the supporting side, on the opposite side, to support these principles and what's the evolution of those leadership principles for job interviews, there's been a process which I call the open sourcing of those principles. So to put it short, here, if 7 years ago you had to pay someone good money to get some interview questions related to those principles, nowadays you can even ask ChatGPT and it will give you relatively accurate examples, right? So open sourcing the way Amazon hires and even the questions that they hire on, I believe it's definitely an evolution, a trend that's been to candidates' favor, which is, primarily driven by this digital environment, by today's marketplace. My point is not necessarily Amazon. Okay. Next point I'd like to talk about here is the current environment, right? So it's no secret that for around 2 years and for at least 1 year more, there are fewer opportunities. Job opportunities, employment opportunities within Amazon as well. And when there's fewer opportunities, it means that who's going to get hired at Amazon will be primarily internal candidates, their existing employees shifting to other roles, or exceptional candidates. And exceptional candidates don't really need to learn Amazon's leadership principle for the job interviews, except if they want to negotiate a better job offer, right? Whereas internal candidates, they already know the questions and how those leadership principles work, right? So there's nothing really new on the leadership principle side. So there's maybe not as much interest for Amazon as a commercial business to maybe innovate on their leadership principle side within a candidate context. Again, so long story short, I believe their Amazon interviews still do evolve. They still have plenty of programs to improve the way they hire, even for the bar raisers. Overall, even if the leadership principles or the way they hire based on the leadership principles has not evolved, and they are not pushing any major innovation based on the leadership principles, it's rather driven by an external factors, recruitment marketing, people like me talking about the leadership principles. But if you want to significantly improve your chances to pass Amazon interviews through innovation, I believe there's better ways than to look at the leadership principles versus, having a more purely behavioral approach to prepare this interview, such as preparing on key behaviors. I made a video on how to speed up your Amazon interview prep by 50%. Or another very efficient way you could improve preparing these interviews would be to role play them. So long story short, Amazon's leadership principles are a good thing. I believe there's a very positive development, and structured hiring is as fair as it can get from a candidate's perspective. And yes, this is pretty much it. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.